Hey everyone. If you look at the current hardware market in the industry, storage, memory, just hardware in general, it looks to be fire and brimstone. It is so difficult to find a decently priced stick of memory, NVMe disk, whatever, let alone, if you're looking for a very specific one, like a write-friendly NVMe, a write-hardened NVMe, maybe they might be out of stock altogether. And so some experiences that I've had recently with procuring hardware led me to want to do an episode specifically about the state of the hardware industry. So today I've got Eric Siron on the show, and we are going to talk about the state of the hardware industry. We're going to talk about some personal experiences recently trying to get a hold of hardware, what sysadmins are doing in the enterprise and the SMB, what you should do to help get through this current period of hard to acquire hardware, and lots more on today's episode of SysAdmin Weekly. Hey everyone, welcome to SysAdmin Weekly, the podcast by sysadmins for sysadmins, dedicated to all the tireless tech folks out there working in the trenches day in and day out to keep the digital world spinning. As always, I'm your host, Andy Serwich, and this is episode 52, recorded on, let me make sure I have this correct, recorded on July 9th? Yes, July 9th, 2026. And today I've got Eric Siron on as my co-host. Hey, Eric, how's it going?
Well, I have to apologize in advance. I'm getting over something. I will attempt to mute before I cough, but no promises. And my voice sounds even worse than usual. I apologize for that too, but there you are.
Hey,
how are you?
I'm doing good. I mean, longtime listeners of the show know that I've done probably multiple episodes while trying not to hack and cough. I think the most recent was about 4 weeks ago, just after I'd gotten back from InfoSec EU in London. I came back with bronchitis on that one. So I don't know, something is going around this summer. It's very strange.
Well, of course, now the last week, we did this whirlwind tour, started in Windsor, Canada, drove over to Niagara Falls, Canada, then down to lovely mountains of Vermont, and then to the lovely mountains of New Hampshire, and not a 0% chance I picked something up along the way, especially at Niagara Falls. That place is wildly insane. So
I've heard that. So
I had not, and I kind of wish somebody had said something because, it's really pretty, but I think knowing what I know now, I would have just settled for the pictures.
Gotcha.
I don't think I would ever recommend anyone ever do that again. It's just
interesting.
Not great. Maybe if you're in your 20s, it's probably better if you're in your 20s, but for an old fart like me, it's just...
Let's look at the pictures once you get to our age, right? So
yeah, just look at the pictures. That's fine, because you know what I have now is pictures, so it's not. We did do the Lady of the Mist thing where you take the boat right underneath the falls.
Oh yeah,
and that was fun. But again, I've been wet on a boat before. It's not that crazy. So
it's just a different place is all. So
yeah. So
anyway. So we've got a great show lined up today. As everyone knows, the hardware market is, how do I want to put this? There's a certain word I want to use, but I can't if I want to keep the show PG rated. The hardware market is messed up. How about we'll say that? As anyone who has looked at hardware anytime recently has seen. And I personally went through a whole rigmarole thing looking at hardware for a project not that long ago, and I came out the other end of that process saying, screw this, I'm re-architecting the lab for longevity, and it was a whole thing. We're going to get into it, but today we are focusing on that question, why is Homelab hardware so flippin' expensive in 2026? And so, but of course, we have our usual regular recurring segments that we have to get to, starting with our News React segment. And I guess selfishly, I'm going to go first on this one, Eric, because I know you said you had a more tame one. So I guess we'll do bad news, good news. That seems like a good approach here. So we'll start with the bad news. my news react segment, because folks know I'm in the security, cybersecurity industry. So of course those are the types of news articles that catch my headline. And of course, I didn't explain what the segment is all about. Our news react segment of the show is all about my co-host and I. We pick an article that caught our eye sometime in the last couple of weeks, and we discuss. So mine for this week is the JadePuffer ransomware. Have you heard of JadePuffer, Eric, out of curiosity?
I don't think I have.
So there's been this long story in the cybersecurity industry, a long-winded warning, if you will. Hey, at some point, AI is going to handle the entire attack chain, right? And to my knowledge, this is the first case where AI has handled the entire attack chain from start to finish. Now, a couple months ago, some researchers got it close to like 80%, but there was still a human element there. Here in this case, according to the Bleeping Computer article, which I will link in the show notes, and I'm quoting the article here, researchers identified what they believe is the first documented case of a ransomware operation, JadePuffer, conducted entirely by a large language model agent. According to cloud security company SysDig, JadePuffer used an autonomous AI agent for reconnaissance on the target to steal credentials, move laterally, establish persistence, escalate privileges, and to encrypt data. Let's see. The article goes on, and I quote: the researchers say the AI agent adapted to failures during the intrusion, much like a human operator would handle obstacles. The operation also adapted in real time, retrying failed steps within refined parameters. In one sequence, it went from a failed login to a working fix in 31 seconds. So, yeah, I'm not going to read the whole article, but just to kind of give you an idea of its initial foothold into the target environment, it exploited CVE 2025-3248, which is an unauthenticated remote code execution vulnerability in Langflow, which is a popular open source framework used for building LLM apps. So, fantastic article if you really like dissecting attack architecture like I do. Maybe I'm just weird like that, but I'll put that in the show notes so you can take a look at that. But that's how do I put this? It's a brave new world, right? I mean, we knew this was coming. All of us in the security industry knew that at some point this was going to happen, and well, it looks like it's here. We can send little, armies of AI agents off to conduct cyber espionage and attacks on our behalf. So yeah, it's going to be interesting times for defenders moving forward. So that's my news article for this week. How about you, Eric? What do you got?
Okay, well, I do have a tame one. Before I get to it, though, man, yeah, because you got me back on the AI thing again. I want to take a lot of the comments I have made in previous episodes where I'm kind of beating the same drum about, oh, look, another CEO who's never had a job in their lives are kind of explaining the future of work to me and how AI is going to take my job that they don't know how to do. I want to summarize a lot of them. They are finally starting to move away from that. They've decided maybe that's not it. And well, whatever. Y'all can read I'm sure you've seen it all. I'm going to make a prediction based on it. I think what's going to happen is they're going to come along and say any failure, anything you're doing to not hit whatever arbitrary metrics they've set for you is because you don't use the AI correctly, and therefore you must be replaced with someone who will. They are going to start blaming all problems inside their organization on people who can't use AI correctly.
Right.
I think that is the net sum of all of these speeches that they keep giving, is they found another way to blame people who do work for a living for all the missteps of the people in the C-suite who have never had jobs, have no idea what's going on, and don't really seem to know how to run a company, in my
Right.
opinion. I think there's a lot of rampant executive, straight out incompetence going on, and we're all paying the price for it. But they're going to use this AI. You don't know how the AI works, and that's why we're not making money. So you're fired or laid off. That's my prediction, and I'm sorry if it comes true, actually, because it's going to hurt a lot of people. But
Yeah. I forget which company it was. I remember reading a news article that talked about the CEO or senior leader in a given this. I forget the organization, but they basically said like if you're not using X tokens a week of AI, like what are you even doing here? That was like the sentiment. That's
Yeah,
not the exact quote, but that
that
was
was
the
the
sentiment.
CEO of NVIDIA. That was the first one, and I've seen another one since then saying that. And it was funny because he's also the guy. Well, I work 6 days a week, and I'm like, huh, that's kind of strange because like I literally can't ever open a tech news site without another quote from him. And it's like spend an awful lot of time in front of a microphone for a guy who works 6 days a week. But okay, I mean, I know people in actual like press relations jobs who don't give as many interviews as this guy does. So
Right.
okay, keep talking to me about all the work you're doing. I think he actually did have a job at one point in his life, though. I think he's one of the standouts that has been. I think he was a hardware engineer for a while, so I hate to dunk on him too much because, but he's also really drank the Kool Aid and he's up there. Yeah, you know what I mean.
Yeah.
Anyway,
So what's your
but
news item?
my calm one. Do
Happy
you
news now.
remember? I'm gonna. A whole lot of people go, oh yeah, on this one, and a whole lot of other people who are younger are gonna be like, what are you talking about? Do you remember SCO? Run by Darrell McBride. Are these ringing bells for you?
This does
They,
bring back a
they
vague recollection. Yep.
okay, so they had bought the rights to Linux, not Linux, Unix,
Unix. Yeah,
and
it
I
was
don't
SCO
remember
Unix.
which SCO Unix. Yes,
Yep.
they had got their hands on the IP for a bunch of Unix stuff, and then started suing everybody who had ever even said the word Unix. You kind of remember this?
I
Well,
do
that
remember.
all got basically laughed out of court. Like, no, what are you doing? SCO then sold all that to this company called I'm probably gonna butcher this, but I'm trying here. Xinuos, Xinuos, who now has all of the Unix IP that SCO had, and they've decided we can do this, and so they're currently suing IBM again for, or it may be the same case, and they're keeping it going. I'm like, this is wild, and they actually got in front of a judge. So this is like the horrific case that will not go away. Like they don't have a product. They've never made a product. SCO, as far as I know, never made a product either. That's just like we exist to sue people. So okay, all right.
I do remember in my MSP days, I worked on a SCO Unix server once. It was for a tire retread plant. So worn tires would come into this place, they would retread them and then sell them. That was basically the whole place. But all of the retreading machines were run by a SCO Unix mainframe that had digiboards in it with cables that I don't even remember what type of cable, but cables that ran out to the machines from this central server. And like I was the only guy in the MSP that knew anything about Linux. They're like, huh, this seems Linux-ish. Let's put
Seems like an
Serwich on
Andy
this
problem
thing.
to me. Yeah.
Right. I'm like, gee, thanks, guys. And that was my one experience with SCO Unix. So
Wow.
uh anyway. That's a good segue into Nerd React. Our Nerd React segment, our Nerd React. See, this is 2 episodes in a
I was
row.
going to ask you if you
I
changed
have
something.
mixed the name of I did this in the last episode. I've mixed the name of the segments together. Our
That's okay.
Nerd Hour segment, where my co-host and I we talk about some geeky, nerdy thing that we've been doing either in our personal time or our professional time. And I guess I'm going to run first with this one too because I'm kind of excited about this one. It's going to seem like a little simple thing, but mail client Thunderbird. You know Thunderbird, right, Eric?
Mhm.
Been around for a while. Now, I I have a couple Linux boxes in the house. I have a Linux laptop that when I'm not sitting at this desk, I use it around the house for personal use and my lab stuff and tech stuff, all the other stuff that's not specifically related to my professional job. And I use M365 for a lot of my side projects, which means Exchange Online is a necessity. Now, if you've ever tried to configure open source mail clients to connect to any Exchange server, either on premise or in the cloud, you know that it's not a fun thing. It's not a fun journey. And more specifically, the last couple of years, it's been very problematic because no popular open source mail client supported modern authentication in 365, and you still had to leverage old school, but still good, but old school protocols like IMAP and SMTP.
Mhm.
Now, that said, as of version 145, Thunderbird now supports connecting to Exchange sources using EWS, Exchange Web Services. So, and it
Really?
also supports modern authentication. So it opens up the modern auth prompt. You can log into your 365. It accounts for MFA. And lo and behold, Thunderbird works with Exchange Online. I was sitting there. I was so shocked. I was so happy and excited. And my wife's like, "What are you so giddy about over there?" And I'm like, "Thunderbird, mail client. It works with Linux and Exchange Online. This is so cool." And she's just like, "What?" Like,
Okay,
but
having a really genuinely viable alternative to Outlook is huge.
yeah, for sure.
I mean, I
Now,
like but I haven't used Thunderbird in 20 something years
I know
easily,
I was
right?
I
But
was
and
I was super happy about it. I ran into a bug very quickly. So I have a fairly large mailbox. So it starts pulling down the messages and like I can't interact with anything. Like I'm trying to click on stuff, it's not loading messages. So I get the debugger. There's a debugger built into Thunderbird. I get the debugger out, and come to find out, it's pulling down a whole bunch of messages, and then Exchange, the EWS protocol on Microsoft side is like, "Whoa, hey, slow down there, buddy. How about you try again in 5 minutes?" So there's a rate limiter on EWS on Microsoft side, and there's a bug open with Thunderbird currently to where user experience should be prioritized when background stuff is happening. So
right.
it was fine once it downloaded my whole mailbox over the span of like 30 minutes because it was getting throttled every 40 seconds or whatever, but it eventually worked. And then I did a little bit more digging. I guess the Thunderbird team is also working on support for the M365 Graph API. So interesting things coming. Now, again, I have some reservations about Mozilla's direction as of late,
Mhm.
but still cool, right? Still cool in my opinion. So that's my
I
nerd
love
hour
that.
item.
Oh, I love that. That's almost a news thing right there because, geez, a viable it's because one of the things I keep saying is like, "Man, they're all in on how AI is so awesome. Why is Outlook still so terrible? Why
Especially
is
new
it?"
Outlook.
Oh, yeah, and I
New
had never
Outlook.
got it up, but I've seen news articles of people like, "Yeah, the Outlook team was really upset that nobody wants new Outlook." It's like, "Well, we tried it." And I tried, I really did. I was on it for like 6 months at least. Like, I just can't do this anymore. And
Yeah.
they gave you the little feedback box all the time, and I'm like, "Why do you even have the feedback box? What are you doing with it? You're not reading it. Why are they not taking all that feedback, pushing it through AI, and having AI go, 'These are the things that really upset users,' and then going, 'Maybe we'll work on those.'" But no, I like, oh, it's hilarious to me that AI will do all the things, like, doesn't seem like AI is doing any of the things
Yeah.
from okay, I'm done.
No, all good. All good. What do you got for nerd hour? What have you been doing?
Oh, well, since I was on vacation, not very much. Still really doing the Hugo stuff, and I'm gonna have to come back and get my nerd credit back here a little bit here on the AI thing because AI's been helping me a lot. Hugo uses that language that I'm like, I don't really wanna learn any more languages, and I think at the end of the day, I don't really want that many complicated things.
Yeah.
So I'm like, "Hey, AI, this is what I want," and I'm doing it right in, Visual Studio Code,
Yep.
and I have a GitHub Pro subscription, and, at the level that I use, I know a lot of people are saying they're running out of AI tokens real fast because 'cause they're on a pay-as-you-go model now, but I'm not going I'm not burning mine down, I guess I should say, so no concerns. So I go in and say, "Hey, this is basically what I want. Help me out here," and it gets like 80% of it, and then I just have to go in and tweak some things.
Yep.
So
I really like that about AI with stuff like that. That it gets you, like you said, it gets you 80% of the way, and then you could adjust for the very specific things or the things that it got wrong. Because I still
Yep.
I don't run into hallucinations or mistakes as much as I used to, but still once in a while I still
Yeah.
come
Well,
come across one.
so like what I ran into is like one thing on the so on the original Project Run Space site, uh, I would occasionally, well, actually throughout my writing career, I'd occasionally get hit by college students who are like, "Can I quote your work?" And I'm like, "Well, sure, yeah, just follow whatever your instructor's rules are for citations, and yeah, go ahead."
Right, right,
Um, I think it was a courtesy. They didn't have to ask me, but they did. And like, well, yeah, I'm definitely not going to tell, Uh, anyway, so on the first Project Runspace site, I had found this little plugin for WordPress that would set up, like, if you want to cite this article, just click here. Do you want MLA? Do you want APA? And a couple other things. Just click it and go. So I'm like, I want that on this new site too. That plugin for WordPress broke and it never worked after.
right.
Well, it's gone now, but well, I think you can still see little links where I used to have it, like little artifacts, right? But I
Yep.
want that, right? So in the Harvard format, it's uh, and I think at one of the others at the end of the citation, you have to say I access this resource on whatever date. So it sets a
Mm,
time frame of like if the web page is updated between the time that you cite it and then if the teacher or the plagiarism checker wants to go back and verify that if the website changed in the interim, then they have that timestamp in the student's paper that says, well, I access this on this date. So
right.
if your update then on the page is later, then the teacher understands that you didn't necessarily steal anything. Maybe they can use the way I don't know. It doesn't matter. Not the point. But I want that in there that I access this on, which so that's going to have to pull from the either the server, which isn't going to happen because it's Hugo, or from the client browser,
Right.
right? So when I told it this is what I want to do, I actually said I want to block here with tabs and the four formats that I've chosen to use, and it did the whole block. It figured it all out, everything I wanted, except on that access by where it just said the Hugo's time.now or something, whatever that is,
Right.
which is going to give it the date that I last, what's the
Modified
unit?
it, I think.
Yeah. So when it compiles,
Yeah.
that's whenever that time.now function runs,
Oh,
then the
for the
Hugo
site
process
itself. Yeah, yeah, yeah,
for
yeah.
the
Yep.
site itself, that's the date that it's going to put in there. So that's not going to be the actual access date. So it had it down to like, well, I'm going to need that access date here, and I have
Right.
this time.now function. That must be right. Well, no, it's not. But like, okay, I can fix that. I think. I mean, I have to go do some JavaScript or something, figure out some way to do that. But okay, that's fine.
Yeah. Yeah. Should be doable. Well, cool. Very cool. Yeah, excited to see the how it all comes out in Hugo. I everybody knows I like Hugo. Super easy. Well, the basics are easy. If you want to get really complex with it, you can, it's possible, but I do like Hugo and static site generators like that. So anyway, so real quick, couple of show plugs here. Again, normally I do these before the two segments we just did, but if you'd like all the links associated with the show, you can find those at www.sysadminweekly.com. We also have a companion newsletter that you can find out at newsletter.sysadminweekly.com. And on the website, there is a link to our GitHub discussion boards where you can leave comments, share useful scripts, whatever, right? It's just kind of it's a little bit old schooly in like a forum type format where you can interact with our SysAdmin Weekly community and generally just hang out, right? The goal there was to prevent folks from having to join yet another Discord server. If you're like me, you've got 20 or 30 Discord servers in your Discord application for various things. So anyway, with that, let's talk hardware. And I guess I'm going to start the main segment today about what led to me wanting to do a whole episode about why hardware is so expensive in 2026. So, like I said, there was a series of events that led to me saying, what the hell? And then decided to do this episode. And so, regular listeners will know that I've recently made quite a few changes in my lab. I used to have K3s lightweight Kubernetes running in my lab across 4 physical nodes. Most of 3 of the 4 of them very old hardware. I think one like 12-year-old laptop that was running a Kubernetes virtual machine. I had another old gaming desktop that I had swizzled into a server, and it was running a couple of VMs. And then I had a 10-year-old server, so old stuff, right? Well, as old stuff is wont to do, well, what does it start doing? Starts failing, right? I had a hard drive flat out fail on one of the boxes. The SSD on the laptop was starting to throw all kinds of, hey, I'm at imminent failure, please check engine now states, essentially. So I didn't want to rely on that one anymore. And at that stage, I'm like, okay, well, maybe I'll go out and refresh some stuff. Because my really big beefy Debian box that runs the lab today is like less than a year old, barely less than a year old, and it's a really nice box. So I'm like, well, maybe I'll grab a couple other small pieces of hardware. I'd still like to maintain a K3s cluster in my lab if I can, because there's not any hard reason why I need to learn Kubernetes, but I like learning some new tech thing at any given time anyway. So I'm like, I'll just look at a couple of the more memory-heavy Raspis, right? I can do an ARM-based Kubernetes cluster, run some ARM-based containers. There's plenty of stuff I can do with that. I'll go out and I'll grab 3 Raspberry 5s, the 16 gig model, right? And the last time I had looked, they were $120, $130, depending on where you get them. Well, when I went to procure them, now you're lucky if you can find them for cheaper than 305, 310. So, I mean, that's more than 100% increase. Now, okay, I'm like, all right, well, I guess that's a pill I can swallow. Now I'm going from, $350, $400 to like $900, but I'm like, oh, okay, yeah, I guess I can do that. The other thing about Kubernetes as a service, it is very, without getting too far into the weeds on the specifics, it is very write heavy, especially if you stripe storage across the nodes. There's a service called Longhorn that sits on top of all your nodes, and it stripes the storage across every node in the cluster. Super useful, because you don't have to, you just add a node to the cluster and Longhorn stripes across it. Like it's seemingly magic, right? I mean, that's the power of Kubernetes. And it's very write heavy. And then Kubernetes itself has an underlying database, depending on how you configure it, that is also very write heavy. So I'm thinking like, okay, I'm going to need NVMe for good performance, but I need very write friendly NVMEs. Like any consumer grade NVMe, storage device is just going to get hammered, and it's going to die faster than I want it to. So I go out and I start looking at very specific NVMEs that are known good for write workloads. Like Western Digital Reds and what's the other one? The name is blanking for me right now. But there's a couple of them out there. And I knew that, okay, given the hardware markets, given the shortages of wafers and the memory problems, and there's also storage problems, and there was news that Seagate, I think it was Seagate or Western Digital, I don't remember which one, they're not only at capacity for the entire year of flash storage, but also for spinning disks, they're completely at manufacturing capacity. So I knew going in, I'm going to be paying a little bit more for storage. So I start looking. And these write-friendly NVMEs, not only were they listed as very expensive, they just plain weren't in stock. I could not find them. They were not in stock anywhere I looked. And it got to a point where I'm on eBay and I am looking at used NVMEs that fall into these specific categories I'm looking for, and I stopped. That's the point I stopped. I'm sitting right here where I'm sitting right now, and I'm looking at my monitor, and I stopped, and I'm like, Andy, why in God's name am I looking at used storage, flash storage, which has a finite number of operations? Why am I looking at used storage on eBay? This is insane. Like, and that's where I pumped the brakes, and my entire mindset shifted, because I'm like, okay, do I really need the Kubernetes cluster? No, there's no tangible reason why I need it, other than I like having it just for learning and tinkering. I can learn and tinker other things, right? So that was the moment where I'm like, you know what? I'm not playing this game. I'm not going to play the hardware game. That's when I re-architected the entire lab to live on and leverage fully all of the newest hardware that I have at my disposal. So that monster Debian box I built with 128 gigs of memory in it, and bunch of good solid storage, it is basically running. That's all my lab is running on that at this point. And I knew, okay, now I'm on a single node. I can't do failover, which means I need to have a really robust backup strategy. So I've got local backups to my local ready NAS, which is woefully out of support. I think it's a ready NAS 316. I think I mentioned this in the last episode, but it's a ready NAS 316 with unsupported versions of SMB on it and unsecured versions of SMB on it that I have disabled. There's one NFS share on it, and there's one box in the entire environment that's allowed to talk to that NFS share. It's solely for backup. And then from there, it goes to Backblaze for offsite storage. So I've got, if something happens to that Debian box, all my stuff is there. I've got recovery mechanisms, right? So I've made those conscious decisions based on what happened here. Now, the other thing is, like, not only was all of the hardware prohibitively expensive, like I said, I couldn't even find some of it. And then, kind of unrelated to this particular case, but coming a little fast forward a couple of weeks here to more recently, there's a number of reasons why I'm looking at a local inferencing box. And I've been looking at Strix Halo machines. They are AMD boxes with the integrated system on a chip memory, and I've been looking at Framework Desktop. Frame.work is the website. Fantastic box, but for a 128 gig model, it's going to be like damn near $4,000. But I can run monster local models on that machine. And similar situation, I'm sitting here, I'm staring at this $4,000 price tag. And I currently have a Claude Pro subscription, not the Max, Claude Pro, just, the entry level paid subscription. And I've been bumping the limit occasionally. Like every other week, I'll bump up against the limit. It's not insurmountable, but I'm looking at that $4,000 amount, and I'm like, even if I had the max plan, that's like 2 years of the max plan for that $4,000 box. And and this is a whole different topic. I mean, the U.S. government limiting access to Fable / Mythos. Some users of Claude are starting to get basically identity verification prompts for certain things. So there's a couple things that make me a little leery of long-term depending on the big AI vendors. But I look at that $4,000 price tag and just hardware in general, and I don't know, man, it's really hard to justify some Homelab hardware in the current environment. And so this is the part where I'm gonna give you a chance to get a word in edgewise here, Eric. But that story. That is the whole crux of what led to this episode, right?
I don't really have a whole lot to put in there because, on the corporate side, we're seeing kind of the same thing. We're having to rethink what matters and how we're going to budget for it. And of course, all the pressures will just go to the cloud and like, well, no, that's not really a solution. Um, yeah, so it's, I think your problem is being experienced by people everywhere, all over,
Yeah.
in a lot of places, and yeah, we're making some different decisions than we used to, and doing those kind of equations. And I'm not sure where it's going to come up, as we talk about future strategies, but I'm kind of hoping it does kind of give us a kind of a shift in behavior. So I think we'll come back to that though as we work through this discussion here.
Yeah. Yeah, probably. The other thing I want to mention is there was a case where I'm like, okay, I kind of planned on like $1,000 for changes to my lab in that particular case. So when it became clear to me that you know, the replacement Kubernetes cluster was not going to happen, I'm like, well, maybe I update that old NAS of mine and I get something better. So I looked at a couple of QNAPs. I looked at a couple of other kind of Soho NAS listings for various vendors, and QNAP, like every QNAP was just out of stock. Everything just out of stock. So all that was out of stock too. So it was,
Right.
I mean, it's just like the hardware market in general is just fire and brimstone. And I have a couple of buddies I talk with that they work with Ingram on the regular in terms of ordering hardware. I have a couple of MSP buddies I know that work with a couple of other distributors. And it used to be you would get a quote. It would show up on your desk and it would be good for a week, two, sometimes a month, depending on the distributor, right? Now it's like, okay, here's a quote. It expires in 48 hours. Good luck,
Well, and I've seen a couple that like it expires in 48 hours, but we still can't actually fulfill it. Because you ordered at 36, and it like, of course, the sales guy's like, "Please don't kill me." you know, they're not doing it out of, at least the people facing us are like, it's not. Yeah, it's you'll rarely catch me going to bat for a salesperson in tech. I've, but sometimes with these folks, it's like I don't get the impression that they're actually doing that sales thing of, "Ooh, I can get more margin out of you by look at the horrible market." It seems like these salespeople are really getting yelled at a lot for, but you told
I
us the price was going to be, and no, no, no.
I suspect I suspect a lot of those distributors are having real inventory issues. And I think
Yes,
ultimately this will lead to I mean, there's already there's always been a third party market or a not even a third party market. What am I talking about here? I'm struggling with the word. A third hand market. That's what I'm thinking of. There's always been a third hand market, like, eBay, Facebook listings, basically tech people selling to other tech people, for
right.
Homelab type of situation. I think we're going to see a resurgence of that. The other thing in my notes here, just real quick, because I had forgotten the specific model of storage devices I was looking at. I came across it in my outline here. The specific high endurance NVMe's I was looking for were the Seagate FireCuda 530 and the SK Hynix Platinum P41. The P41, the Hynix Platinum P41 is like the industry standard, workhorse when it comes to NVMe write heavy workloads. And that thing, that was the one that I was looking at used listings on eBay for. Anyway, just to
Ouch.
kind of close
And I
the
wonder. So here's the. Do you feel really burned by like eBay and these third markets? Because I'm afraid of them anymore. Like
yeah,
you've
I am.
got, you look at the news and people are like, "Yeah, I bought this marketed as new NVIDIA RTX whatever, and I get it out of the box, and it's
Yep.
not that. It's something
Yep.
else." And it's like they're like they're counterfeiting these things. They're not just like, well, it's not really new. It's actually been put in a data center, had everything run out of it. The copper's basically worn out.
Yeah.
Here you go. They're actually like counterfeiting this stuff. I'm like, wow, this is insane to me.
Yeah.
So I wonder if we're going to see like Oh, I'm trying to think if one has ever existed, but well, maybe a Tiger Direct kind of a thing. You remember them? I don't know if they're still
Oh
around.
yeah,
Maybe they are, but like somebody who says, "Yeah, we'll buy used equipment, we'll bring it in house, we'll make sure it is what you said
what
it
it
is, and
is.
then
Yep,
we'll sell it to people as a middleman." And they're going to make boatloads of money if somebody can figure out that model because of the trust problem. That's really what there
yeah,
is. Like, if I
and
see
it.
something on Facebook Marketplace, I'm not buying that.
Oh, I know,
I don't
I
know
know.
you. I don't know anything about what you did. I
Yep,
might buy like a piece of furniture that I can go look at, but I'm not buying electronics that way. I'm not
yep,
doing that.
yep. That trust question is what ultimately made me pump the brakes, because I'm looking at this listing on eBay and they had posted a command line picture of the SmartMon Tools utility that shows the health of the NVMe. And I'm like, okay, it's cool that you did that. I don't know that the NVMe that tool was run on is the one that you're actually sending me. And by the time I have it, it's already too late for me to do anything about that, you know?
Mhm. Yep.
So,
And I feel bad for the legitimate vendors,
oh,
but
for sure.
but it's something like they're talking about all the crap going on Amazon. Like you go out there and like I don't recognize 90% of the vendors on things that I'm trying to buy anymore. And they've all got like 4 and 5 star reviews. And okay, and you take a risk on it and you get it. Like, what's happening? These are not 4 and 5 star products that we're getting, and that's on stuff that isn't electronics, that isn't
Right.
technically used. But it seems like it's so easy now to game all these systems, like you can't even trust reviewers anymore, you know.
Yeah. It's it's just a whirlwind of it's like the perfect storm. There's just so much going on that it's all having an adverse effect on everything else that's going on, unfortunately. So, um next up in my outline here, and there we go. I wanted to talk about, kind of have a discussion and ruminate a little bit on why this is happening. We all know generally there's a massive AI build out happening, and that is sucking up a massive amount of the hardware, right? At a high level, generally, we all know that's what's happening. But I wanted to go a little bit more into the specifics. So I started digging into some of the information. And so, again, when we talk about that hardware specifically, we're talking about HBM, DDR4, DDR5, NAND. The capacity for all of that manufacturing is being absorbed by the AI build out, like I just got done talking about, right? And so ultimately, consumer and SMB channels, it's like trickle down tech gear, right? Trickle down tech gear. Maybe we'll get some scraps. Um, and I mean, it comes down to, for those things I listed, again, HBM, DDR4, DDR5, and NAND, that comes down to three companies. Samsung, sorry, SK Hynix, and Micron. Three companies responsible for that stuff. They control roughly 95% of DRAM production. And here's the kicker: it takes 3 to 5 years to bring any new fab online. So, I mean, even if you started right now, it'd be 3 to 5 years before like that particular plant would even uh, start making new stuff. And I was listening to Windows Weekly, actually. I had a long car ride this last weekend, and I needed a long podcast, and I had exhausted all my other usual ones. I'm like, I haven't listened to Windows Weekly in a while, so I started listening to that. And uh, Paul Thurrott and Richard Campbell are the two hosts of that show currently, and they were talking about this topic briefly, and they brought up this. I forget which one of them said it, but it got me thinking. One of them said that there's not really any incentive for those three manufacturers to increase their capacity. There's not really any incentive for them to do so. And I started thinking about that and I started looking into it. So here, Gartner is forecasting a 125% DRAM surge, 125% DRAM surge, prices of DRAM, and a 234 NAND price surge in 2026. And here's the thing, like, those manufacturers have little reason to rush the capacity back to consumer parts anyway, because like the vast majority of that new capacity is going to go towards AI tier buyers anyway, because they will pay a massive amount of money for it. So even additional capacity is just going to be sold for massive amounts of money still. And I forget, I saw a headline about a Samsung executive talking about the percentage gain of profits in that segment of the business this year has just been astronomical, like fall on the floor astronomical. Like I had to look at the number twice type of thing. I should find that article and add it to the show notes. But yeah, I agree with that statement after I looked at the data from Gartner. It's like, okay, yeah, they have no there's if I was them, would I add capacity when I'm able to charge insane prices and and my workloads for the entire year and probably the entire next year are filled out? I know exactly where all my work is going for the next year and a half. Like probably not. you know?
Nope. There's a negative incentive to do so a little bit. So a couple thoughts I had is, well, let's start with the incentive part. Is, well, if it ever catches up, then what? If Samsung plants, 6 or 8 new fabs, and then we get through this huge crunch, and we don't need those anymore, then what? That's a lot of money to put in something that may not run. Because and I've talked about this before, is there's a whole thing. What do they call it? The slippery slope fallacies. When we start, how's it going to end? It'll never end. It'll just get worse
Right.
and worse and worse. And it never does, because there's always something that goes, we're going to let it slip so far and be like, we got to do something different because this isn't working. And that's what's happening with all this hardware stuff that you're talking about. So when you were talking about your Kubernetes cluster you're building in your house, or your issues with it, right? What the whole thing that started this, I've been seeing a couple of articles flash across my newsfeed talking about how I took a much smaller LLM, ran it at home, and it gets like 99% of the way to what I was doing with Cloud Code. And I'm
Yep.
like, that's significant. That is something to
Yeah.
pay attention to. You got a guy running it in his house. See, like my big data center back here on this little box right here, this one,
Yep.
that's where I'm running
Yep.
my, no. Right. But the point being, if he can do it in his house and get that close to what Claude Code can do, then there's going to start being pressure on these AI engineers. Like, do we really need them to be this fat? Is that actually a requirement? You know,
Yeah.
so that's going to be one thing that's going to happen. They're going to be start home users are going to kick it off, just like this guy's like, well, I'm not going to pay for Cloud Code anymore if I have this thing I run in the house that's almost as good.
Yeah.
Why would I pay the subscription? So there's some revenue loss. And other people are going to start doing that because, I mean, we've already seen other news articles of companies going, we said to use like 10,000 tokens a week, but then we got the bill for 10,000 tokens a week. So don't do that anymore. Right. So
Yep.
there's already, it's all about market forces, the willingness to buy on the customer part. We were willing to buy AI when it was super cheap. And then the AI companies wanted to spend all of this money to make more AI. And they're like, oh, we have a problem. So we're going to have to raise the prices. And all of a sudden, but my willingness to buy is still down here. I'm not willing to pay anymore. So
Yeah.
AI, they have the problem, not me, because my willingness to pay is not increasing because the value is not there. Especially
Right.
like what saying with what this guy's showing. If I can get the performance you're trying to sell me at this price, but I can get it like here, this level of performance at this
Yeah.
price or less, because
Yep.
I'm running it at home, I'm not doing this. Get out of here. So that's gonna expand. There's gonna be pressure on the AI manufacturers to, hey, remember how you all of these CEOs forever were telling us as the employees, you got to do more for less money. Well, guess what? Your turn, fellas. So
All right.
so the demand on it is probably going to shrink from at least those two different angles. One from the we're not willing to pay for it, and also without the cash influx, they're not going to be able to buy it.
Yeah. Local models are getting to be very, very capable. I run the local models I can with the hardware I have. My MacBook Pro that's 32 gigs of unified memory. I can actually run some models with 27 billion parameters. They're kind of lower medium end models, and they actually are very capable. Quen 2.5 27B is a very, very capable model. I'm surprised. And then you can wrap it in tools like OpenCode. OpenCode is an open source Claude Code type harness that you put on local models. And if the model has tools support baked in, it can operate very similarly to Claude Code. And the other telling thing along this line of discussion, Eric, is lately I've been seeing a lot of headlines where some of the big uh, AI company executives are speaking out against open source models, and I'm like, I
I
wonder
wonder why that is.
why.
Yeah.
And I I love Claude Code. I use Claude a ton, but the CEO of Anthropic was one that was saying, "Whoa, hey, you know, uh, I forget the exact quote, but it was something along the lines of like, "Hey, open source models could be used to do some bad things."
Oh yeah, and your closed source models can't.
I
Sure.
know, right? Let's talk about all those jailbreaks. That's a whole different episode, but uh, yeah. So I would love to see local models get super efficient to the point to where a lot of that stuff that we are currently depending on massive chunky
Hmm.
models in the cloud for right now just run on a standard machine here in my house. That would be
Yep.
ideal.
And
And I think it
regardless,
would
even if
reset
we don't
market
get there,
forces.
exactly. That's where I'm going. Even if we don't get there, even if you never really get that efficiency in your house, the fact that we're close enough is going to put that pressure on the big guys. Like you're gonna have to do this. You're
Yeah.
gonna have to bring your pricing model needs to come back into my willingness to buy sphere, or I'm not going to give you money. This is
Yeah.
just straight up how people buy things, right?
Yeah.
This is Econ 101, right?
Yep.
So they have to do that. So in order to do that, they're going to have to spend less. And for them to spend less, they need to buy less. You know what I mean? And this whole
Yeah.
thing is eventually going to be like because it's not sustainable.
Yeah.
Either the only way to sustain it is for these companies to say, you know what, we will build these giant fabs. We will make sure you always have the RAM that you want, no matter what, in which case that'll be a price control. But see what I mean? It because it's not sustainable on what we have today.
Yeah. So there's a couple other areas I wanted to touch on before we wrap up today here. The other statistics I looked at were, are prices going to come back? So first I heard, well, by the end of 2026, things should start looking. Then I heard, no, well, 2027. Now, one of the executives of one of the big Chinese component manufacturers, I don't remember which one, they're on record as saying like, okay, we don't see it normalizing until 2030 now. 2030 is the number I'm hearing. And when I look at that, I'm like, okay, let's say we got to 2030. I do not see prices coming down. Maybe they'll come down a little, but they'll never be what they were before. And so, where is it here? So Gartner's own projections have prices settling at 125 to 130% above pre-shortage levels on a permanent basis. Yeah,
Agreed.
so I've got it right here in my notes. I need to look at my notes more often. It's the CEO of SK Hynix is the one that mentioned the 2030 as the realistic point for the market to stabilize, which is way past that 2027, 2028 window that we've been hearing about all this time. And so uh, there's always been this unspoken assumption for a long time, at least as long as I've been in IT, that hardware gets cheaper over time. Well, that doesn't seem to be true anymore,
No.
unfortunately.
No. What will happen? And I don't know what they're using, what models they've set up to predict when that's going to recover, and what it is taking into account. Like, is it really thinking of Is it just basically saying we're drawing a line based on past and we're just going to follow that? Is
Yeah.
it just basic linear regression? Or are they actually going, you know what, at some point people are going to revolt and say, we're not doing this, and the demand is going to go away, and therefore, or what are they doing to base these numbers? I have no idea. I just don't know. My guess would be it's probably not going to be 2030 before the world has decided it's had enough of this. I don't think it's going to
It's a
tolerate
long
this for that
time.
long.
It's a long
Yeah.
time.
So what I think is going to happen at some point, it's going to break,
Yeah.
right? Somewhere it's just going to stop. What I think they'll do is they will start to lower prices a little bit, but not very much, because again, there's still only a handful of suppliers. So unless somebody's out there building up a fourth, well, if you won't make the capacity, we will, which again gets us pretty close to that 2030 line, even if, like you said, even if they start today. So if they're there, then all right, that will drive prices down if we get a fourth or fifth player in the game. But nothing else is really going to push them down. But what will happen is they'll start to come down a little bit so that they can get closer to that willingness to buy, and they'll figure out, where's the happy line here where we're making enough profit to, get right. They'll
Yeah.
figure that
Yeah.
out. And then what they're going to do is basically wait for inflation to catch up, and then it'll normalize over time.
Yeah.
Does that kinda make sense what I'm saying there?
It does. Yeah.
That it'll
Yeah.
never go back to where it was, but they'll get down here, and then inflation will gradually bring it to
Yeah.
where they are, and then it'll continue basically on that kind of thing. That's most likely what's gonna happen.
Yeah. I think the real annoying gut punch damning part of this whole thing is that AI and tech in general is built and maintained and put up by hobbyists and practitioners like all of us, right? Yourself, Eric, myself, all of our listeners. And like we're the ones having to deal with the fallout of this, you
Mhm.
know? And that's the real gut punch about it is like the we built this culture that enabled the creation of AI tools that we have today, which now it's impacting all of us, right? So it's you talk about that point where people lose the willingness to buy. I hit that wall when I was staring at that eBay screen. I'm just like, you know what? I'm not playing this game. Like I'm not doing this. And that's when I re-architected my entire lab. Now I've talked to a number of people that um are making very much the same type of choice, but at the professional business level, like, okay, instead of replacing those 4 boxes or those 10 boxes, we're just going to extend the warranty on them for a couple of years and we're going to ride them out for a few years yet. And instead of being N+1 on my cluster, maybe I'm going to do N+2 because I'm going to account for a little bit more hardware failure than what we had before. I've been hearing a lot of people and reading on communities, a lot of people are making those types of choices now. Because it's so hard to get new hardware and it's not cheap. And I know I've even I've got a buddy who does finance work for a tech company, and he's had a couple fall out of chair moments when looking at quotes, right? He's been looking at tech hardware quotes for 20, 30 years, and he says it's never been this insane. So um when we talk about what do you do to try and work through this, that's been that would probably be my recommendation is what I did with my lab is you architect differently. You architect for longevity. Do I not have as much redundancy in my environment now? In my case, I'm running on a single box. So that's when I went and I looked at my entire backup and recovery strategy because that piece of my architecture needed to be more robust now, right? Because I changed things on the compute side. I mean, that's kind of where personally I've been. I don't know if you would have any recommendations for dealing with this, Eric, because I mean, really, it feels like we need to we need to last a couple of years. We get
Yeah.
through a couple of years, things will get easier, I hope.
So this is kinda where I was heading this whole conversation, as to this, how to answer this question. And I'm gonna start off with a little bit of an anecdote here, because if I don't, people will tell me I've lost sight of the reality. So Remember when they started telling us, all right, cars are making all this carbon in the atmosphere, and so you got to go out and get more efficient cars and do all this, and everybody did, like,
Yep.
okay, well,
Yep.
then other people started running the numbers and going, okay, so if every person on Earth replaced their car with a 25% more efficient one and cut their driving miles in half, all that combined wouldn't offset what the airline industry puts into the atmosphere in a week,
Right.
something like that. My numbers aren't exactly right, but basically going, it's not your fault. Sure, you can pitch in and help, but all of us working together is probably not going to tip the balance.
Right.
So it's the same thing when we're talking about all this hardware stuff. AI is the elephant in the room,
Yeah.
and all the rest of us are kind of squoze out into these corners. All of our best efforts probably aren't going to have a whole lot of impact, but I also don't know that. I don't have the 10,000-foot view of the entire hardware purchasing market to know what I just said was true. It's what I
Right.
feel is true, but
Right.
could be wrong. Um, on that note, our little part of going out and getting a 25% more efficient car and driving fewer miles. You have heard me complain a lot of times about people who will uh, come in and like, all right, we're the IT department. We're being asked to stand up this new application. We look at it. It requires a SQL server. Okay, so we need a machine with 2 terabytes of RAM and 85 petabytes of storage, and it's going to have 4 bonded 100 gig NICs, and okay, and then I walk in the room and go, all right, what is this? Well, we're upgrading this old system. Okay, so then I go look at the system and say, okay, so this database is 12 megs in size. It has 4 users who work in 2 people at a time in 2 shifts, leaving a full 8 hours of a day where it doesn't do anything. And you want to put what hardware underneath it? Well, it's a database. You have to do that. No,
No, I don't.
you really don't. So, but that is everywhere all the time. And
Oh
then,
yeah.
databases are kind of the low hanging fruit because everywhere you go, you're going to find some database system way overpowered, way, just no load on it whatsoever. That's the easy one, but it's everywhere all the time. So, what I'm hoping is that this crunch and the way hardware is expensive is going to bring back the art of going, let me right size the hardware to the
Yep.
problem it's going to solve.
Yep.
And these people are, well, it's a database. You got to stop talking. Just go away from me. I
Yep. Show me the logs.
because
Show me the
yep,
proof that you need
show
2
me the
terabytes of
proof,
memory.
and maybe then it'll also come back to the whole point of like, because I remember there was a time in my life I didn't personally do it, but I was the muscle behind the words, and so the sales guy would go in and go, I don't know what your current IT guy is costing you and charging you everything, but I got a guy over here who will do better for less. Like he charges more for the hour, but he's going to cut your actual hours in a half,
Right.
if not less. And so then I'd have to come in and prove him right. And we were almost always able to do it by taking guys who are like, well, you got to have this. And they were like, no, you actually don't. And how about this instead?
Yeah.
And they're like, oh, yeah, it's great. Look at all the money you're saving us, And so maybe that will become a valuable skill again, is the ability to not walk in and
Right
just,
size things.
well,
Yeah.
it's database, you got to.
Yep. I mean, ever
So
since.
that will be our first line of defense against this, is all of us collectively out here going, let's stop going, well, it's a database, so we're going to do this.
Yep.
Instead of just the one size fits all plan, like, how about you figure out how to take 6 minutes to look at some logs,
Yep.
maybe read some user forums, and because some of them will be like, yeah, you know what? They told me I had to have, 64 gigs of RAM, but man, I've been running it on this 4 gig machine and it's great.
That's just fine. Yep.
Just
Yeah.
fine. Yep.
Especially since the virtualization era started. I feel really old saying that because that was a long time ago. But
Really was.
that was when I adopted the same approach that you just talked about. Like I have a database guy standing in front of me like, "Oh, I need 12 gigs of memory and,
Mhm,
8 CPUs." I'm like, "You know what? You're going to get 2 CPUs and 4 gigs of memory. And if you need
mhm.
more, I'll add
We're
it."
gonna first look at the logs, the
Correct.
performance traces.
Yep.
I've had that on my Twitter profile forever. Like, if you can't bring me a performance trace, whatever you're telling me is a lie.
Yep. Yeah, I still think it's funny. I imparted this wisdom onto my almost 17-year-old son now, because he came to me one day. He's like, "Dad, I need more memory. I need more memory, you know, because he's got a big gaming computer and him and his buddies play all the time. And he came to me and he's like, I need more memory, and I'm like, do you though? Do you need more memory? I'm like, here, let me show you. Let's go find out if you actually need it. And yes, he was paging a ton. He did ultimately need more memory, but I showed him perfmon and, here's how much memory he's using, and here it's paging. So it shows that you've exhausted the memory that you have. And I'm like, okay, yep, you need more memory. You're right.
Yep. And
But
that's how that's done. Good job.
exactly, we
Good
didn't
job,
just go
Dad.
on
Good job.
vibes. We looked at the data. So,
And that is how it's done. And I'd like to bring that back to the world in general because I kept getting shouted down. I'd gotten places and be like, well, you got it. And I'm like, okay, prove it to me. I've heard you say the words.
yep,
Show me the traces.
yep,
And I'd get shouted down, and I just finally all right, whatever, it's your money, it's not mine.
yeah,
Um,
yeah,
but I would also get mad because, like you, I've worked with a lot of people that they're buying it for a customer, and I'm like,
right.
oh well, other people's money is always really easy to spend, but try to treat my customers' money like it's mine, which is one of the
Yep,
reasons I was able to do some of the stuff I did and
yep,
not spend it crazy.
yep,
But they get really mad whenever you start talking like that. Like, what is I'm not wasting their money? Like, oh, okay.
right.
As
Well, the
long as
last
you
thing I
think.
what's that?
No, I'm just being salty now. We're
No,
good.
gotcha. I was gonna say the thing I wanted to wrap up here, because I've seen this question come up a lot recently, is like, okay, could China break the bottleneck here? People are asking that question because there are some Chinese manufacturers that are starting to build their own GPUs, build their own memory. I don't know what these stand for. They're the names of companies, but CXMT and YMTC um, are starting to close the DRAM and NAND gap with Samsung, SK Hynix, and Micron. And where I wrote it down here, I thought I wrote it down here. I know that they were looking to increase their market share, I think from like 5 to 8%. I didn't put it in the notes here, unfortunately. They were looking to increase their market share um, um, by end of this calendar year. And then there's some Chinese GPU makers, More Threads, Byron, Huawei. They are scaling too, but like, here's the thing: is they're having the same thing. They have their own massive AI initiatives that they are supplying with this gear. So, their AI accelerators are going to compete for their wafer capacity. And so it's not likely to make any tangible impact, unfortunately, on the consumer market. And even so, right? As a security guy, I know a lot of our electronics already come from China, right? A lot of our electronics are built in China. When it is something as ingrained in compute as memory and GPUs, stuff that's super important to AI computing, I look at it with squinted eyes a little bit closer from a security perspective, right? I'm not sure I would 100% trust it for enterprise capacity. If I'm just going to use it to, I don't know, play Minecraft and fancy video games, right? I maybe wouldn't care all that much. But if I'm an enterprise, it's something I would at least think twice about. Any hastily built and rushed to market piece of hardware from the Chinese market in this environment, right? Again, I'm not downplaying all hardware that comes from China, because like I said, a lot of our electronics come from China, right? But they are mostly well regulated, well known, and well guarded supply chains, right? Because they've been scrutinized and looked at all these years. They're not all perfect. Don't get me wrong. This is a whole other episode I think I'm coming up with in my brain here. But again, so unfortunately, the answer to that question, could China break the bottleneck, is no. So anyway, anything you'd like to add before we wrap things up here, Eric?
No, I'm really excited to see in what way this breaks because I kind of want to upgrade my home lab too. And like you, I can squeeze some more life out of what I've got.
Oh, I forgot to even mention it because it's such a new development. This last weekend, I went to get my gaming laptop out. I opened the lid, I pressed the power button. Nothing. Nothing. After troubleshooting the power brick, I ultimately broke the case open because the battery's all internal, so I disconnected the battery internally. After all my troubleshooting, all I can determine is it appears to be mainboard failure. So I replaced it with my now, let me do the math on this, my now 7-year-old ThinkPad. And you know what? That thing runs great with Debian Linux on it. So that's what I'm sticking with there.
All right, there you
So,
go.
but that again, that that adds to my case for keep using what you have because it's going to be really painful to do anything else at the moment. So,
Mm-hmm.
anyway, well, Eric, I want to thank you for spending some time with us. As always, good talking to you about our technical sysadmin topics. It's always good to hear from you, my friend.
Good to be here. Thank you for putting up with my voice. And
No, I didn't even notice anything. You did fine, so all good.
you're just
All
being
good.
kind.
Appreciate that. And all of you, thanks for watching and being part of this community. We love having you here, and we love creating the content for the show for you. Again, be sure to check out the website, www.sysadminweekly.com. Check out the newsletter.sysadminweekly.com. And if you feel like it, hop on over to the GitHub discussion boards and share your current hardware battle stories with us in this current market. I would love to hear from you guys. Again, I'll put a link to the GitHub discussion board in the show notes. Or if you prefer, you can certainly leave comments on both the YouTube versions of the show as well as the Spotify versions of the show too. Or if you want to get to our inbox, you can hit us at contact@sysadminweekly.com as well too. So with that, we will let you get back to your day. Stay safe out there, and we will catch you again next week for a future episode of SysAdmin Weekly. Have a good one.